I often talk about zoo human beings. I truly see that we are an animal in captivity and that we live in artificial habitat. And we've lost most of our vital skills and senses. And because of that, we identify as something that we're not, you know? And so it's like we've become this homo consumerist, like we seem to have become exogenous in a way where we no longer create meaning and generate knowledge from within, but acquire it from outside. There's so many levels to it, from like the fundamental worldviews that we have been fed from atomism and scientism and the way that we believe that this is a material existence and that not that actually everything is alive and is an emanation of the divine. And
Welcome to the Spiritual Forum, everyone. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so excited about my guest today, and I'll introduce her in just a few seconds. I want to just remind you to subscribe to the YouTube channel and also remind you that this is a donation based ministry. I have a podcast, a prayer and retreat ministry. And if you benefit from this podcast, which is a voice of hope, inspiration, and awakening, if you benefit and you feel like giving in exchange for your benefit or to honor that, you can do that at thespiritualforum.org. I do plan to get a donate button on the YouTube channel at some point, but I'm not there yet. So if you're listening to this in a few weeks, you might want to check for that button. Otherwise, you can go to thespiritualforum.org. I'm so grateful for all who have donated to this podcast. It keeps us going and keeps our voice of hope, inspiration, and awakening out in the world. Now, let me introduce my guest. She is right now sitting in Peru, and her name is Henna Maria. She's a medicine woman, an activist, speaker, poet, and teacher of natural law. Henna was initiated into the art of healing song by indigenous Shipibo masters and specializes in the ceremonial practice of ayahuasca. Now, Henna and her husband Richard run and own their own healing sanctuary and are stewards of a beautiful medicine garden in the Peruvian Amazon. And you can see the beautiful place that she is right now. I just love it. I'm going to let Henna talk about the three organizations that she's founded. It's Dawn of Peace, the International Police for Freedom Movement, and Save Our Food Initiative. So I'm not really going to go into those details, but they're all about human rights and animal rights and natural rights and rehumanizing our societies and all the good stuff that we're about. So welcome, Henna.
thank you so much, Carol, and thanks for everyone tuning in. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it just looks so beautiful there. And before I push the record button, I mentioned that I have been to Peru, and just it's just a magical place. At least that was my experience. So I'd love to know more about why you're there and what you're doing there. But let me first just ask you a few rapid fire questions. You said that you would play in that arena. So let's go with the first. Do you have any kind of word or phrase that you would say kind of underlies your life or your philosophy?
Yes, so I have this mantra: to serve the sacred, to protect the sacred, to revive the sacred.
That's beautiful. I love
Yeah,
that.
this I hold at the center of everything I do. That's
Okay,
my
I'm looking
mission.
forward to talking more about that. Is there someone in your life who has influenced you in particular? They could be a public figure, could be family, could be dead or alive, it doesn't matter.
I would have to say it is the master of all masters, King of kings, Yeshua, the Christ. And everything from his scripture and his teachings is, yes, the single most influential being in my whole existence. Yes.
You know, I think I have that in common with you. I completely feel the same way. There's so much richness to who he was and what he taught beyond what religions tell us. So perhaps
Absolutely.
we'll talk about that. And then last, if you could be anywhere in the world, you seem to be kind of a world traveler, where would that be? A favorite place?
I would say right here, right now in Peru, this is one of my spiritual homes. This is where I was called on my path, on my life mission. I came here for healing now 11 years ago, just seeking to heal personal trauma. And then through this very deep journey of personal healing, I received the calling to learn the medicine, learn the indigenous healing arts, so that I could pay it forward and help as many people as I can in my lifetime to also find healing. So this is the single most powerful and meaningful place in my life is this land, actually, the rainforest here in Peru.
And where exactly are you? I mean, I know you just said the rainforest, but,
Yeah, so I'm in the upper Amazon in the Loreto region
okay.
in Peru. So Iquitos is the nearest city.
Okay, alright. And how much time do you spend there?
Well, I used to live here, so for about 5 years. But now, depending on how much time we have each year, so we return. We have a medicine garden that we're stewards of. We plant medicine trees and different kinds of herbs here, and we have a fruit garden. And we have guardians who live on the land, so thankfully it is running and it's going even when we're not here. But this time we're here about 6 weeks in Peru this year, and hopefully in the future, we can spend some more time again. But at this moment, that's about all I can give of myself to this place
Okay,
right now. Yeah,
okay, and your home is?
in Finland.
Oh, Finland. Okay, alright,
Yes,
good.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, very different.
Very different, but I would say it's the northern jungle. Like Finland is
Okay,
some of the
I
most
get that.
pristine, beautiful forest alive, and we have the cleanest water. We have almost 200,000 lakes. So there's actually a lot in common. I would say that our mosquitoes are more ravenous than the mosquitoes in the jungle here in Peru. So
Oh,
that's
that's so
something in
interesting.
common.
So
Yeah.
interesting. Okay, well, that's wonderful. The reason I wanted you to be on my podcast is because I've followed you off and on for a few years, and you seem to be a person who is just like really love in action. Like you're in service to humanity and the world, and I'm always looking for people who is that, who is love, who is being love, and expressing themselves and creating so many ways to reconnect with people and animals and nature and all of that. So I'd love to hear your story about, how you kind of got to doing what you're doing. And then I also want to go into these three things that you founded. So can you tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, sure. So I've always been a seeker and a lover of humanity, one of those crazy ones that actually loves people. I have ever since I was a little girl. And yeah, I started on the path of activism already when I was in high school. I I felt that there's something profoundly wrong in our modern society, in this modern culture, and somehow people were losing their essence. That's maybe the best way to describe it. I felt everything is kind of dying, that there's somehow the world is a very sterile place. And so I was looking always for a way to move people and somehow inspire them and help them feel something. So my first actual mission was learning expressive arts, and I went to an art school. I moved away from home when I was 16, and then very early on I realized that artists are activists. Normally, artists have some kind of a mission, something greater than themselves that they're standing for, something that they are wishing to awaken in people through their art. And so, as I was in the art school, I found myself surrounded by distant thinkers, free thinkers, philosophers, kids who had something different about them, who weren't just interested in makeup and clothes and serious American Hollywood movies. And they had a thirst for something else. And so I felt very at home in that environment. And yeah, I participated in my first, actually, there were pro-Palestine demonstrations around that time. And then from then on, I've been involved in many, many different kinds of organizations, from Amnesty International to also starting my own movements and collectives. And I would say that the more I was exploring the world and the more I would realize what is wrong in the world, the more I was called to also explore myself and explore where I wasn't at peace. And I very quickly began to realize that these are two expressions of the same thing. Like there's something which is the sacred, I would name it. And we as an individual are, of course, in an ideal situation, an embodiment of that. That we are an emanation of the divine, and we have a purpose here on earth. And so is everyone around us. But somehow, the way the world has been going, we could say there's been a fall of consciousness, and less the sacred is present. And everything that is happening in the world, all the various wars and atrocities and the sickness and poverty that is here, I don't see it as a natural state of humanity. I see it as a fallen state, a spiritual sickness. And so I felt like in order to understand how to affect the world around me and how to bring remedy to this collective malady, I also needed to understand myself and who I am as a being, and what is my purpose here. And so that called me on a spiritual journey also. And then I've been on that journey ever since, trying to understand the root cause of my personal suffering and the trauma that I had experienced growing up. And then how does that relate to the collective trauma that humanity is experiencing, and all the different expressions of that in terms of how we've lost our connection to Earth, and what does that do? What are the ripple effects of that? We've lost our connection to the great creator and knowledge of natural law, and how does that express itself? So my big mission has been to try and gather, like, okay, here are all the different emanations of this root cause. Like, what is the actual fundamental journey that we must take in order to heal it all, you know? And of course, it starts from personal healing. Yeah. And then I've started all these different kinds of campaigns and organizations to better communicate my experiences and my ideas on the matter.
Okay, let's hold there because you've said an awful lot. And I think it's really interesting. I mean, I think most people feel this kind of fallen state of the world, and yet we're still so pulled to it. It's like, well, we had the whole creation story is a story that's really about the falling from some sort of Edenic nature, some sort of oneness with all that is, some sort of
Hmm.
connection to all creatures and God and who we were. And then there's a story about falling out of the garden. And I really feel like that's written in our hearts in a way, like we want to kind of clamor back or figure out how to get back, but there's so much distracting us. Like you say in high school, the hair and the makeup and the movie stars and all of that. And I know it's probably maybe not that important, but do you think do you think that this is just some natural outcoming outcome, excuse me, of humanity and our mistaken identity? Or do you feel like there are like powers out there that are trying to keep us from finding our way back?
Hmm. Yes, to the latter, absolutely. And I think the further we fall, then the harder it is for us to remember even where we came from. You know, like I often talk about zoo human beings. I truly see that we are an animal in captivity, and that we live in artificial habitat, and we've lost most of our vital skills and senses. And because of that, we identify as something that we're not, you know? And so it's like we've become this homo consumerist, like we seem seem to have become exogenous in a way where we no longer create meaning and generate knowledge from within, but acquire it from outside. There's so many levels to it, from like the fundamental worldviews that we have been fed from atomism and scientism, and the way that we believe that this is a material existence, and and that not that actually everything is alive and is an emanation of the divine. And that was one of my first lessons in the jungle, actually, when I was in a very deep state of meditation with the medicine in ceremony. I was shown, I was asking about where is God, like from my naive place of that point of view, where I was then thinking that God is somewhere. And
Mhm.
I was shown that you are in God, like this is God, that matter is spirit made manifest. There is the material expression is no less holy from the ethereal spiritual aspect of the divine. That actually this earth, this garden, and this is what the indigenous knew. They knew that this is the living temple of God. This is the living Bible. This is the creation. And by communing with nature, we commune with the divine. That the mother is the feminine emanation of the divine. And so this was one of my like major realizations is wow, it's not that we are here to learn to somehow ascend, but we are here to get to know the mother and know our own bodies and know this temple, and through that, through within, then connecting to the higher realms. So the heaven isn't somewhere far away. It's like it's already here. It's within us. It's a state of being. It's interlaced with this reality at all times, and we can tap into it. So it's a lot to do with frequency. Where are we? How are our spiritual apparatus tuned? What are we able to receive, and what are we emanating? What are we signaling? And that's how we create this reality also. So one of the things that people don't understand is that we're in a constant state of creation, whether we are conscious of it or not. And of course, when we're in a state of unconscious creation, as the majority of humanity is, then the result is evident. We are constantly unconsciously creating a state of chaos.
Mhm, mhm. Just look
Whereas
out
if
the
we,
window.
yeah, look out the window. Whereas if we were aware of our creator, being, who we are in our essence, then we would pay a lot more attention to our thoughts, because that's where everything begins from, right? All is mind. So from that state of mind, then come the words and the actions. And for me, like the full expression of spirituality is when we become aware of all these different expressions of our consciousness, from thought to word to deed, and that they are in alignment. And without the final, which is the deed, the action, we can actually change this reality. I think that's where a lot of the schools of thought in spirituality go awry, that they miss the concrete embodied action state. I'm not one of those schools of thought that think that just by meditation we can change everything. I think that's a wonderful thing to do in terms of like self-maintenance, and creating a beautiful field in this reality, but then change the condition of reality, change the, like, what's actually going on. We need concrete action.
I think I'm with you with everything that you're saying. I'm very intrigued by the idea that we are like animals in a zoo, that it's such an interesting picture. And I want everybody who's watching and listening to think about that, think on that, that we are not expressing ourselves as natural humans just like the elephant can't express herself, or the giraffe can't express himself, or the gorilla. They're in an artificial environment. And so they're doing kind of a version of gorilla and giraffe and elephant that's not the natural version. And I think if we just wake up to that as a start, that there's a big opening there. This isn't who we are. Like, this isn't
No.
who we are. The
Hmm.
way we spend our time and social media and TV and the news and entertainment. And not that there's anything wrong with entertainment, but that we're distracted and that we're not connected. And even as I'm speaking that, I'm still kind of speaking from the head. you know, we can talk about it, but that's what you're saying. To move it from here into the heart and then out into the world is something that it's like the necessary step that a
Mm.
lot of us kind of stay stuck in. Look at all the stuff that's happening in the world. Oh my gosh, I just realized I'm a giraffe or an elephant in the zoo. What can I do? Well, I can watch Netflix, or I can do whatever I need to kind of assuage myself and feel comfortable in this state, because this is the best thing that I can do, the best that I can do. But there's a whole world out there. We need to get out of the zoo.
Absolutely. Yeah. And this, I think this is what the powers that shouldn't be. You asked the question that whether I think that it's a deliberate,
Hmm.
obfuscation of what's actually going on in our true nature. And yes, and I think this is why these technologies are being so pushed to us, because the more we start to depend on all these gadgets and all these external technologies, the more we lose our internal technologies, our sacred technologies, and our senses. This is something that I've noticed every time I come back to the jungle. There's a period of about 1 week where I feel like I'm this like automotive that is kind of like getting out of the program, like kind of glitching and like, oh, but where's my phone? Like, oh, where's my phone? Where's my phone? And it's like, no, no, wait a minute. It's like, I don't need the phone. Put the phone away. And then I immerse myself into the present moment, into reality as is, into nature. And I'm so liberated, and my dreams are getting stronger. And it's like the nature is the communication of the nature is able to penetrate in a completely different way, where I don't even need to be doing anything, quote unquote. I can just be present, and I'm realizing that, wow, I'm constantly being spoken to. Like I am in school just by being here, just sitting here with the plants. They are teaching me. Like it's just pouring in, but I'm not able to be in that frequency if I'm constantly tuned to this virtual hostile wavelength, which is so unnatural. And so it's like we don't even realize the magnitude of like the divine wisdom that is ever present if we are limiting our conscious awareness to these, to these devices. And
Yeah, yeah.
it's so this is what, like, and then all the different kinds of, aspects of the madness start coming out, just the same way as you see animals in captivity. They start behaving in very strange ways. And I think if you put most people out of the city into nature, their criminal habits would just vanish. Their all sorts of OCD, addiction patterns would also just go away, because we're so used to consuming that which is hollow. It's a lifeless world that we live in, with lifeless gadgets and lifeless items and objects. And so it doesn't give us anything. Whereas when we're in a natural environment where everything is alive, everything has the breath of the creator inside, it satiates us spiritually. That's the incredible thing. It's like, as soon as I get here as well, I notice my hunger levels go down. And that's one of the things I realized is like the most intimate way to connect to Mother Earth is actually through eating. We take her into ourselves. And this is why I think in the cities, a lot of people develop, eating addiction, because they're so deprived of the natural connection.
Oh, you
So they do everything they can to get nature into their vehicle by eating, 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 eating. And then when you take yourself into a natural environment, it's like suddenly even just the fragrance of the plants is
yeah,
nourishing you, the light, the frequency, the sounds, everything. So suddenly you're like, oh, I'm being nourished, I'm being fed on all levels all the time.
that's so beautiful. Um, you know, you really paint a picture of another world, and I think the first step is for us to realize that where we are is not natural, because I don't think most people can see that. You know, we're born into this society. We're
Yeah.
enculturated into this one, and little children are handed their laptops or iPads or whatever pretty young, and all of this information bombarding from screens and activities and all of that. And so every child comes in, believing this is reality, like this is the world that the true world that I live in. And so just awakening to that, that sense of dissatisfaction in us that we kind of have, a sense of something isn't right, that's the part of us inside that's telling us to reconnect with ourselves and each other. um, I think we could stay on this for a while, but I'd love for you to talk about natural law. I haven't had anyone on for a while that talked about natural law. And this is like God's law, right?
Yes. Yes. God's
Not man's
law.
law.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's the law that governs everything, that keeps everything in place in this creation. And so one of the best descriptions of natural law is actually through Hermeticism. So I would invite, if you're interested in really understanding these principles, then to look into Hermeticism and perhaps read the Kybalion. That's one of the wonderful books about that. Or if you wanted to study through scripture, then the Essene Gospel of Peace has a lot of these ancient wisdoms about natural law written in poetic form into the teachings. But so how to put it into words? Basically, we know that there is cause and effect from just being in a physical body. We know that there's buoyancy, there's light, there's different kinds of like physical laws in nature. But then there's also the cosmic law that governs the morality. So what actually is happening on a soul level is also happening on the level of nature, on the level of the creation. And that's one of the fundamental laws, is laws of correspondence. As within, so without, as the universe, so the soul, as above, so below. So this is such a wide topic, how to how to bring this in, but yeah, basically my whole thing is like it's to do with alignment and understanding cause and effect. So every cause has an effect and every effect has a cause. So nothing is random in creation. So if something happens to you, for instance, in your life, or something happens in your community, something happens in the city that you live, and you can understand that there's a reason why these events conspired the way they did. There's a way that we can trace back actually any event to a very particular clear cause. Even an accident, we can see what were the conditions in place that created this event. So it's a lot to do with awareness. And then when you can trace back the cause of something, then you can attempt to change the cause so that that effect, which is undesirable, wouldn't happen again. And so it's quite simple actually in the end. Like we put this into reality all the time, let's say with traffic rules. If there's a dangerous conjunction, then we can tell, like, okay, because people come from this angle very fast, it requires for us to prevent an accident, we need to put a stop sign there. It's like we can do the same on any level. Um, yeah, it's such a big topic. I don't really know how to put it in a context. Maybe if you've got some questions for me,
Well,
it'd be easier that way.
I've kind of felt like natural law is generally the golden rule. I mean, it generally is that universal rule of you know, treating everybody kindly if you want kindness, you know.
Yes, exactly. Whatever you
Yeah,
do to others will be done to you, and vice
right,
versa.
right,
Yes.
right. And it's very very simple, very universal, but it's not the way that we live, generally speaking. You know, we're kind to who we want to be kind to, and we kind of put the others in cages, and we feel okay about it. So, and I think that's that's evidence of the disconnected self that we are, the elephant and the giraffe and the zoo, that isn't really natural for us. Do you think that's true, that naturally we are kind and compassionate beings?
Yes, I think it's even in the name. Human, humane. Yes. If
Yeah.
you just watch the way children are behaving with animals, then our natural instinct is to pet, is to create connection, is to be affectionate. It's not to try to capture and kill. Normally, this is seen as a sign of something very disturbing happening on a psychological level. If a child would try and kill an animal, it's normally seen as one of the signs of psychopathy. So I think that that tells a lot about us as beings, that we are humane, compassionate beings. Oh, speaking of which, I can't believe it. I was just thinking, as if something is pushing my leg.
What is it?
Can you see? There's a big
Oh
turtle.
my goodness, big turtle.
Can
Oh
you
my
see this?
gosh. I c
I was just thinking, what is something pushing my leg? And oh
I
my
wonder,
God.
I'd have to go look at what the turtle represents and the tortoise. My goodness, he's
Oh, there
huge.
it is
Huh?
at my
Hello?
feet.
I think there's a
As
message
we're
in
talking
that.
about animals, yeah. Oh, I pet you. Hey.
I've just got 3 cats sitting over there.
Yeah.
Oh my
Oh my
goodness.
goodness.
Oh, that's so great. Only in Peru.
Yeah, only in Peru.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting to even think about that turtle because, if there are people who've been conditioned to say, "Well, this is wrong. This turtle doesn't belong here. We need to get rid of it in some way," versus like allow it to be a part of our world. I mean, she decided to walk right under your feet and you don't have to do anything about it. You don't have to swat the wasp. You don't have to get rid of the mice or whatever it is, whoever's come into our world.
Yeah.
And there is something that we're very disconnected from if we automatically go to, "This is a pest, this doesn't belong," and build walls and keep the animals out. I think you're completely right about children that nobody nobody goes toward a goat or a lamb or a chick with no child does with a knife. It's just not a
Yeah.
natural thing. That's something that parents teach their children to do. And I think when we teach our children that, whether we're actually teaching them to kill or we're teaching them to utilize animals without really knowing, being conscious about it, I think there's a little trauma that happens there. I think that we become there's some trauma point there that we have to heal in order for us to be able to return to the little child. Remember Jesus, Yeshua, he said, to enter the kingdom, you must become as a small child.
Mhm.
That's the journey back to being that innocent with all of life and wanting to move towards it and to love it versus want to dominate it or to exploit it or to be afraid of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is one of the big gifts when we go vegan, is that there's this opening of the heart again. And it happens through connecting to the suffering of our, little sisters and brothers, the animal kin. And then when you reconnect there, I truly believe that is the portal also to the inner child. And then from there, your heart is just expanding and expanding, and you can actually connect to the suffering of all. And I think you can't love without feeling the suffering of others. I don't believe in this kind of, you know, cotton ball pink love where it's only positive emotions. I think love is the capacity to hold other people's suffering in your heart. as well, and feel for them, and truly pray for them, and want to be of service to them, to see them. And so as long as we don't recognize what's happening to our, innocent brethren, the animal kin, then I truly see that there is a aspect of the heart that remains buried,
Mm-hmm.
remains dead. This was certainly my experience when I had my big awakening with the animals. I just remember my heart just bursting wide open, and it was very painful, but I knew that this is a grace, like this is actually a gift that I'm experiencing right now. And
And
once that
how old were
happens, I
you?
don't think you can ever go back. That was now, let me see, 13 years ago. So I was
Okay.
25. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Do you remember what it was that woke you up?
Yeah, I met an activist. The turtle is still pushing around, by the way. There he is.
Hey, buddy.
It's like he's
She
wanting me to
she
pet
likes
him
you.
or something, because he's like constantly pushing my feet. It's like there's many other places to go, but he just keeps like, hello, here I am.
Feels a good
So funny.
energy. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
so
safe.
I met an activist. I was visiting my cousin in London, and it was just the most serendipitous meeting with an activist man. We were waiting for the same bus in Trafalgar Square, where there's like 100 different bus stops, and we happened to be wearing the same exact outfit, like, but mine was like the female version, and his was the male version. We both had like a secondhand army like camouflage coat with black jeans and black shoes and blonde hair, and then a red scarf with flowers, both of us. And this guy just said to me, "Do you realize you're wearing the same exact thing as myself?" And I looked at him and was like, "Oh my God, this is crazy." And then it turned out that we were going to the same destination as well, which was like 45 minutes away. So we're on the same bus stop waiting for the same bus to the same bus like destination. So then we ended up sharing the journey together. We sat in the bus, and he was telling me he was part of the Occupy London movement, and they had just taken over an old bank, and they were turning it into an old like a free university, and like a community space. And I was just totally blown away, like, wow, what an amazing incentive. And I was telling about my activism, and then he just out of the blue, he asked me, like, "Are you vegan?" And nobody ever asked me that, and I was like, "No." But
Should
my
I be?
values are like nonviolence and peace and love. And so why am I not vegan? It was just like started this cog, he was totally sincere. He wasn't judgmental in any way. And then I was like, "Okay, are you vegan?" And he's like, "Yeah, I am." And he started telling me about certain things about the animal industry, about like some very precise things about the slaughtering techniques, like why they kill animals a certain way, and it's so that they would have this rush of adrenaline in their
Mm.
flesh, so that then when you eat the flesh, you get the high. And he said just a few things like that, and it was like, wow, I'm supporting this industry, like I'm paying for this industry and this cruelty. And I was like, wow, okay, I need to think about this. And then I went back to Finland and I watched documentary Earthlings. And yeah, I just cried all the way through it. Just my heart was broken in 1,000 pieces, and I knew that I could never go back to eating animals. And then it was soon after that where I had my first vision, like a spiritual, mystical experience. And it was actually a vision of a football field full of animals looking at me, all just eyes at me. And I realized this is all the animals I had eaten throughout my life.
Oh,
Yeah, it was all the different, animals, chickens and cows and pigs, and they were all just
wow.
looking at me. And I was just weeping, and I was just saying, "I'm so sorry." And just realizing I'd been eating some kind of animal product every single meal of my life, from breakfast, snack to lunch and dinner, and birthdays, funerals, Christmas, Easter, you name it. Like, wow, I just I felt them. I felt their souls, I felt their hearts. And I knew then never again, like never again. There's not a single scenario where that could ever happen. Like
Mhm.
I'm 100% committed to that
Mhm.
path of
Mhm.
nonviolence,
Mhm.
and yeah, it changed everything. It truly, and it opened a whole veil, of reality that, wow, I wasn't quite prepared for when it happened. But it's not an easy reality to live in. It's a bit like being a virgin in a brothel, some people say, where it's like, wow, seeing the
Right.
world, non-vegan world as a vegan is
It's a hard world to traverse, and I
it
also think
is.
just the opening of the heart that's required to see that field of animals looking at you, the vision or the dream you had,
Hmm.
because that I think that's what a lot of people are afraid of. Like that there's a wall we gotta put up that so I
Hmm.
don't have to feel that. And that's why the slaughterhouses are places we don't see. And,
Yeah,
we see the trucks on the road, at least where I live, and that's despairing enough. But it's easy for people to turn away from that. I know you've been involved in the freedom movement. I'm kind of curious about. I find the freedom movement's obsession with meat to be very strange. Like this obsession that you can't take my meat away is so strange. And
yeah.
whenever I'm in these
Hmm.
settings and I even ask the question, just I'm not even trying to convert anybody at all. I'm just saying, how 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 will we ever be freed completely? How will we be free if we're enslaving anyone?
Yes,
And people get so offended by that question and they cut me off and all of that. But don't you think that's a strange kind of dichotomy?
it is. It was very disturbing for me also when the medical tyranny started in 2020, and realized that most vegans were also pro-vaccine, knowing about vivisection and how vegans are not, I mean, how vaccines aren't even vegan. So it's like both ways. I was so disturbed. Like, where are the vegans who value human life and the right to be untouched for us humans, and right to bodily autonomy for us humans? And then again, in the freedom movement, people who do value bodily autonomy and medical freedom, then not granting that for the most innocent of our kind, like it doesn't make any sense. It's a very strange split. And that's
Yeah.
why I value you so much, Carol. Like, it's such a rare specimen for me to find someone who is able to recognize, like, we need human sovereignty and right to be untouched as human beings, while granting that to all species. Like, to me, this is a fundamental alignment when it comes to natural law as well, that recognizing that if we do this to animals, if we enslave them, and we take advantage of them, and eventually eat them, then we can expect the same to be done to us, and it is being done to us. Soon we're being microchipped, and we saw the lockdowns. What does that feel like to be in captivity? And things being forced on our bodies, our families being broken apart and separated just like they are on animals in the farms. So yeah, absolutely. I believe in what Pythagoras said, as long as we are the ruthless destroyer of lower life, then we can never know health or peace. Like, as long as we reap murder and pain, then we cannot know health or love or joy. So yeah,
That's the
it's a
journey.
strange.
That's the journey. That's
Yeah.
the journey, and just getting finding peace with knowing that there are all sorts of people at different levels of consciousness all over the planet. Everybody's a different level of consciousness, a different awareness, and 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 not putting myself above anyone or below anyone, and just trying to working on my own stuff, but also having to manage the frustration of the vision, the vision of Eden, and
Yes.
knowing that that's our true reality. And the only thing I can really do is my own stuff. and or be like that gentleman you were on the bus with. Just ask questions, make
Hmm.
friends, connect. Don't make yourself any better or try to make anybody change, but just offer some questions and see if you want people want to be in conversation. And people do change in that way, I think.
Yes. Yeah, lead by example. I think
Hmm.
that's the best we can do. And there's a lot of propaganda out there as well about veganism, and I find that term also quite triggering for many
Me
people.
too. Hmm.
Yeah, and that's I don't use it that much normally, but it is an ancient discipline. It's an ancient devotion. It's not new. This So when people think that this is like the Agenda 2030 in action is so that
Yeah.
they can just make everyone weak and create these like beta males, it's like this has been going on for thousands of years. And you look at
Yeah.
the most celebrated philosophers of our history, they all refused to eat animals. They were vegetarians. So
Yeah.
why is
Yeah.
that? And it used to be a requirement to enter these ancient mystery schools is that you couldn't eat animals. It's because they knew that that's the condition you're then inflicting on the greater reality. If you do that to a lesser, brethren, then you are creating that causality also for human children, and there's no way out of it when you come to see it. So
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah, leading by example, and also shedding light and breaking those spells, because there's a lot of misinformation also about veganism and the way of life. It doesn't mean that we are only eating these like genetically modified plant-like organisms and fake meats. There's a whole beautiful holistic way to live that path, and eat from the bosom of Mother Earth, the most vibrant, radiate, health-giving foods. So I think we can do more, in the movement to really counter that plastic veganism that is like
Right. Right.
rising up.
And I think the movement itself is damaged by the acting out of some vegans who put themselves above other people, and I hate
Yeah.
people and things like that.
Yes, this
It's been
misanthropy.
damaged, and I think that's why that term vegan
Mm.
is kind of a damaged term. So I tend to like ahimsa, uh, living or compassion
Yeah.
for all beings. But anyway, it can be problematic. So you mentioned living by example. Let's go to the example that you are. And I'd love for you to, I guess, let me see, we've got another 15 minutes or so to talk about uh, these movements that you've founded, the Dawn of Peace, International Police for Freedom, and Save Our Food Initiative. And these are the ways that you've been in action, and I completely agree with you that we can't meditate ourselves to a better world, and I love that you put feet on your prayers, you put feet on your ideas. So, can you share about these wonderful initiatives that you founded?
Yes. Yes. So the latest one actually is not mentioned there, which is the community project, which is my like ultimate bringing everything together, everything that I've learned in my 19 years of activism, which we've founded in Finland now, the Skotiinpalo tribe. But maybe that'll be another another part or something we can talk about this. But yeah, so Dawn of Peace, I called it into reality in 2019 because I saw that we need some kind of a group of people who's willing to really stand up for what is right, like stand up for these ancient principles of morality and take in all these different kinds of attacks that are happening now, and name them, like name what is the enemy look like, what is it doing, what are the weapons that are being wielded against us. And so I call it a peace organization, or a creative community. So we're a collective of activists who are all also vegan and who stand for voluntarism, who stand for self-sovereignty, who recognize that in order to enact any kind of change in reality, we have to start from personal healing. So we created this collective so that we could share this message that actually all issues have a spiritual stem, they have a spiritual root. And therefore, before we can take a stand for anything, it has to come from a place of like rounded understanding of reality being a spiritual place at the end of the day. And that it has to come from a place of personal healing first and foremost. And then from that place of compassion and wisdom, we can create different kinds of campaigns. We can, take a stand against the medical tyranny, as I mentioned, or embedded technology, or 5G, or whatever it is. We have a long list of causes that we've been campaigning for on the website dawnofpeace.org. But the idea is truly to communicate these things from a place of love, and with peace within us, first and foremost. Because I don't believe in this activist who wears the black hoodie and is like with their fist in the air. I think that's also by design, that this idea has created, that has been created, that this is what activism is. I believe in the more noble fight, which is through inner transformation, inspiring other people to walk the path of peace. So yeah, this is the collective. And when COVID came the following year, so I called it in 2019, I founded it, I started calling activists to join. Then by 2020, suddenly a lot of these things that I'd named in the causes were under threat. So that was a very peculiar thing. It felt like I was being prepared for that time. And so then we hosted roundtables, and we created a lot of virtual material as well. We did demonstrations, 18 months. Every week we were on the streets. We did different kind of, like dialogue-based activations where we asked questions from the local community, and we had all different kinds of creative signs. And yeah, so there's a whole bunch of material if you look for our Odyssey channel or YouTube channel also that we did back to 2020 to 2022. We were really active. And yeah, now I feel like there's a regrouping that's happening. Some of our activists are more taking a political route, and that's not really my interest. I mean, of course, politics is a big question, but I think there's a way to influence politics, not the party political way. So
It's a
yes,
trap. I think the parties are a trap.
yeah, absolutely.
It gets us into a us versus them. You're right. I'm
Yes,
right. You're wrong. And it keeps us divided. And I think that's part of what the powers that shouldn't be want us how the state they want us to be in. So we're
absolutely.
feeding that. We're feeding
Yes.
that.
And believing that somehow the response or the solution is by these players out there on the political
Right.
stage rather than us. I'm all about
Right.
like personal empowerment and grassroots action. So we are going through a bit of a reform, our collective, and I am putting the call out there for others to join who share our mission of more putting out the message of universal values of humanity rather than, going on a particular political ideology or standing for a particular ethnicity or religion or
I know.
nation, but guarding really what it is that we all share, and championing that. So I'd love to actually invite you on board if you'd like to join Dawn of
I'm
Peace.
telling you, this is all about what I'm about because
Yeah.
I am so exhausted by these 2 sides and this idea that these 2 candidates or these 2 whatever. It's like, it's
Yes.
all
Yeah.
nonsense.
It
It's
is.
nonsense, and it's not where the answers are gonna be, and, and it's not sacred. It's
Mhm.
disconnected from the sacred, and so
Mhm.
I love what you're doing. I also, have always had problems with activism that's very angry, angry
Yes.
activism. It's like,
Mhm.
how can that be effective? It's just putting more anger out into the world,
Yeah.
and it's almost like we think that we're effective if we're angry and we're emotional. It's like, well, you can be feeling, you don't have to emote everything, but you can have it's almost like we're disconnecting from feelings and just emoting,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
yeah. and
I totally
shouting and
see
stuff,
that.
and then
Hmm.
nothing really happens. So I've never been one of those kind of activists, and it is kinda hard to find your people or your place in this world. Um, and so everything you're describing is definitely my cup of tea.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I
yeah.
think it's so rare. This is the thing. Like, I was looking for activists who recognize the sacredness of human and animal life. Because
Yes.
I keep
Yeah.
finding one or the other, you know. So this is
Yes.
really my like. I want to put it out there that we do exist. That there are those of us who are willing to stand for both animal and human rights. And
They're connected, and this is the
yes.
thing. It's
Hmm.
they're intricately connected, and, I'm gonna be putting out soon, well, I'm a Unity minister, and I think people know that, but the founders of Unity connected that. They were like, "We're never gonna have peace as long as we're harming animals." They connect this is back in the early 1900s, they connected that, just like you were
Wow.
saying, all the sages from centuries beforehand. It's not gonna happen. It just
Yes.
isn't, we're gonna find ourselves going round in circles and being back at, "Oh my gosh, we're enslaved again," unless we figure out go way back, if there's any kind of a reset, and don't do the animal agriculture or don't do all the domination that we do. If we try that and then put ourselves on a timeline, we would be in a completely different place right now.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I
And then we
totally
can't
see
go
that.
back in the
Yeah.
past, but we can, be where we are and make some changes about where we are in alignment with uh, that compassion for everyone. If you don't want exploitation, then we can't exploit anyone. If you don't want war, we can't wage war on anyone.
Absolutely. It's that
Yeah,
simple. Yeah.
it's very
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah.
Very simple.
Yeah. Yeah. The ego
Oh
likes to
gosh.
get on the way.
Yeah,
Makes
right,
things
right.
very complicated.
Well, I want to make sure you also have time to talk about your other ones too, the Police for Freedom, Save Our Food, and if you want
Yes.
to talk, yeah,
So Police of Freedom, that was an interesting one that started in 2020 from my just collaborating with local police actually in Spain. I came to find that there's this group of police that had woken up to what's going on, you know, in the world, and they wanted to facilitate demonstrations that were organized by police actually. So like awake police taking a stand for human rights because they were of course being made to do very questionable things and interfere with people's like inalienable fundamental birthrights. So then these police started rising up in Spain and they created a collective called Policías por la Libertad. And I joined some of their demonstrations and I did live streams from their marches. And then I started being contacted by journalists internationally saying, what is happening in Spain? You know, what is this thing with the police? Like, can you speak to it? And I tried to ask the police like whether they would like to give interviews, but none of them spoke English. So they said, "Hey, look, you know, we know you. You're an activist. You're on our side. Like, why don't you do the interviews?" And then I was like, "Okay." I did a couple of interviews, sharing about their strategy and what they're doing. And then I was like, maybe we need like an international version of this thing because this is like taking off and people are really interested. And so we spoke with these Spanish police, and they said, "Yeah, you do it, Henna. Like you start International Police of Freedom, and you know what we're doing, so you can do something similar and just put the call out there. Like, are there other awake police officers out there, you know, all around the world who'd like to start some kind of a chapter in their country and start, you know, educating the local activists about different kinds of nonviolent strategies that they could collaborate with the police and how to hold demonstrations in the most nonviolent way possible, you know, how to educate police about natural rights, you know, like things like these." And so I founded it, I think it was February 2021 in Barcelona. And then yeah, I think within the next week I was already contacted by the first Australian guy who said, "I'd like to start a chapter of Police for Freedom in Victoria," because that was one of the worst. I don't know if you remember
yes, I do.
in terms of lockdown and police violence.
Yeah.
So they started a chapter in Victoria and then it spread from there. And by the end of it, we had 16 different chapters all in different countries around the world. And my job was to interview the aspiring police who wanted to start a chapter and also teach them about activist strategies, because a lot of them, they have no experience of being an activist. They've been an order follower their whole life.
Right,
So
right.
how to suddenly empower themselves to become an activist? So that was super interesting. Okay, the turtle is really pushing the table here now. My God, he's so. Let's see if I can actually lift him up and show him. Here we go. So this is my
Hey,
guy.
buddy.
He's wanting to say
Oh my
hi to
gosh.
everyone. Clearly, is he embodying what it is to be like a good cop,
Kind of a
because he's got
him. He
this
wants to be wants to be on
he's
a
got this
podcast.
shell, He's like,
Oh my
oh
god.
my God, he's heavy. He's huge. Look at him. It's like twice the size of my head. So he keeps pushing the table so I can't focus. My God. So anyway, so
There was a little
that was
video time.
interesting. Yeah. So that was such an interesting experience, working with all these police, and then finding, because, as an activist, of course, I have my own prejudice around police, thinking that they are all just, they're just serving their establishment, and, they don't care about law, they don't care about human rights. But then finding no, actually, there are a lot of really good police out there who are there to catch the bad guy and who want to help, protect people's human rights. And so that was such a healing experience as well for me. And that
Yeah.
helped me see beyond the uniform, and really start putting the message out there that actually, we only bad things can come from hating police. We even that increases the violence, and it increases the stupidity of activists and all the recklessness and everything we do when we start othering them, and when we start seeing them as just the walking uniform, when actually inside there's a beautiful human soul normally. And they just need a bit of humanity to be inspired in them. So a lot can be done by the way we communicate when we are confronted with the police, when we are doing our demonstrations. And so that was a really beautiful experience, really beautiful. And now some of those chapters are still going. They're still doing different kinds of things. I think we all got a bit of a battle weariness, after the lockdown's finished. So Police for Freedom, that there isn't a very clear cause that is putting everyone's arms, so to say, as it was during the COVID times. But it'll be interesting to see if we find another kind of chapter on what to do, because now we are confronted with transhumanism, and even the robotization of the police force, and there's all these things that are coming. So I think there will be a place for Police for Freedom in the future as well. Societies are in flux.
Yeah, just the idea though of, rather than characterizing these people with preconceived notions, like I already know you, and looking into their humanity, I mean, that can be applied in all sorts of different
Yeah,
places,
yeah,
as we have
absolutely.
conflicts. Yeah,
Yeah.
very cool. All right. And Save Our Food, you want to talk about that a
And
little
then
bit?
Save Our Food. Yeah, so the latest thing I did with Save Our Food was actually last spring. We did a conference called Clear Skies Conference, which is all about climate and geoengineering. And so I sparked up this initiative. This was in 2022, when there was a lot of talk about fear around agricultural collapse, and fear around, food chain supplies, being disturbed, and people running out of food. And I wanted to put the antidote to that fear out there. And we created a social media campaign around Save Our Food, which was all about showcasing how much land we actually have amongst us, and how we could even transform our lawns to food gardens with such simple, easy steps. And so we were also collaborating with Jim Gale from Food Forest Abundance. And so, yeah, the whole idea is just put the opposing message out there. We have food, we have land, we have farmers, we can collaborate with local farmers, we can create our own food networks. We don't have to just sit there and be terrified of whatever the next agenda is. And oh no, next they're going to take all our food away. No,
Right,
just
like the
grow your
animals
own
in the
food.
zoo.
Yeah,
Like the animals.
just
Yeah, like, what are they going to feed us? Are they
yeah,
going to feed us?
exactly. Are they
Yeah,
going to feed us? Are they? What's going to happen to the supermarkets? It's well,
yeah.
food doesn't grow in the supermarket. Food grows on Earth. We can grow our own food. And so, yeah, that was a big kind of just push against the fear mongering around food scarcity. And I felt like it really did do something. There was a whole ripple about people starting to talk about their local markets and how to get in touch with their local farmers and like different kinds of tips around how to convert your little garden into some kind of a food production facility and or some kind of food forest or a garden. And yeah, and then the latest was about, okay, well, there's this greater reality, which is to do with our climate and what's happening there. Is that being weaponized against us? And what kind of actually things we have to take into consideration now when we're growing food in terms of just like the humidity and because they're capturing a lot of the humidity in the air with this SAI, the stratospheric aerosol injections. And so they're taking the humidity with these caustic salts. And so we don't have rainfall in many places of the earth the
Mhm,
same way. They're
mhm.
disrupting the water cycle. So how can we grow plants in a way that we are restoring as much of the humidity in the soil as possible? And so I put together this offering, which is available for free for everyone still now. If you go to saveourfood.net/clear skies, this is the sorry, the guy's pushing the table again. So
That's okay.
yeah, so that is available there, and there's a lot of solutions focused information about what's happening with the climate, like the actual reality of geoengineering. What are they spraying? There's samples that have been taken,
Yeah,
and
I think so many people are not aware of geoengineering, and
yeah,
they're worried about all sorts of things, but it's like, wow, look in the sky. Now, I have to say, my husband has noticed that recently we have our skies have been clear. It's like they're suddenly clear. It's like that's really weird, if it's always been the jet trails of airplanes, then why would it be clear? You know, it it was something else, and now suddenly it's clear, which is a good thing. But
yeah,
I think that that's a part of like, when you mention climate, that's not where people's mind go. It doesn't go to geoengineering. It doesn't go to what's happening in our skies, and it's really
yes,
important. Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
again, like I feel I keep being put into these positions of building bridges, whether it's with the activists and the police or
Yeah.
the human rights and and the animal rights activists, like how can we find each other? And I think this is a big one, is how can we create bridge to the climate activists who are so
Yeah.
terrified believing that CO2 which is a life-giving gas. We are a carbon-based life form, so is all the plants. Then, how can we help them get out of the fear of CO2 and come to see the reality of like contamination and pollution and geoengineering and
Yeah.
that's actually the driving cause of this this crisis that is happening, to our ecosystems. So how can we, not dismiss their concern, take it on board, and then open a whole other dimension of reality and hopefully then collaborate, because we all love Mother Earth and we want to do our best to protect her and all her creatures and this entire beautiful interconnected web of life, this ecosystem, so how can we not villainize each other, not dismiss each other, but listen to each other, have a dialogue and come to a greater understanding of what's going on.
Yeah, I really think that you are spiritual activism. You are love in action. And I'm so glad that I had you on today to share how you're bringing the sacred back, uh, or enlivening the sacred that's already there. I think that's probably a better way of putting it. It's not like it's gone,
Mm.
it's that we've just disconnected from it. And you're helping people make the connections and living your life in that way. And I just think that this has been great. I'll have you back on. We need to talk about so many other things, I think. But
I would
I
love
do.
that.
Yeah, I mean, I could go an hour in any direction, but I try to keep my podcast around an hour for people's ability to listen. I do want to give you the last word, though, is we'll have all the links. I'd love to have all the links to everything that you mentioned in the show notes so people can check out these initiatives that you've created for all of us. Is there anything else that you would like to just share before we close?
I would love to just put the call to action out there and invite. If you're feeling that some of this is resonating, what I'm talking about, I would say one of the most healing experiences for me in terms of my like personal transformation was when I realized that I can turn from this like passive player into an active driver, that instead of just signing petitions and wishing that other people do the work, it's like, wait a minute, I have, like, God has blessed me with these hands, which are an extension of our hearts. And these feet, as you said, I love what you said, like, giving feet to love and spirituality, like truly one individual, one inspired soul can cause such incredible ripple effect of change in our reality, that we don't need to wait for someone else to do it on our behalf. We each have something to give. We are all gifted in so many different ways. Like, what is it that's burning cause for you? I think that's the marker, that's the parameter, like what you care about, what you truly care about. There's something you can do in that arena. There's something you can offer. And so many of these things, actually all of them, I've started from scratch. When we moved to Spain with my husband, we didn't know anybody out there. And it was time of COVID and it was lockdowns. It was just me and him standing on the streets with a couple of questions that I've written on cardboard, where it was just like, what does health mean to you? Was one of the questions. Or when does fear end and life begin? You can start something just by communicating with people. Start talking to your local community. And you start attracting the people that are feeling your message, and you put out the signal, and those who are ready to receive it, they pick it up. And I just want to really put it out there that you are enough, and you're more than you even allow yourself to see. Like, your ability to create change in your life is just tremendous. So, put your feet out there and put your hands in the soil, and you can do beautiful things.
Well, that's a wonderful, wonderful message. And it pulls us out of any sense of hopelessness or any sense of, I can't, these things are happening to me, or I just need to try to anesthetize myself and get through it all. It pulls us out of that, call us into action. So thank you so much, Henna Maria, for this message. You've blessed so many people today, and your life is so inspiring, and your environment that you're sitting is so inspiring. And your turtle friend also is so inspiring.
I think I've got an admirer.
You get he's got a crush on you.
Oh, thank you
That's
so
so
much for
cute.
having me on. I just feel a serendipity that he's part of this as well, because it's like we're not alone. And actually, our
I
animal
know.
kin, they are asking us to
Yeah.
do this, like also to work for them. And they don't have a voice, but they're here equally sharing this beautiful earth with us. And let's make a more beautiful world for them too. We can do a lot with our actions, and we can vote with our money, what kind of products we buy, what kind of places we live in. We can do so much. So yeah, thank you. Thank you,
Oh
everyone.
gosh, thank you. And everybody, thank you for joining us today. I know you were blessed, and I look forward to having you on again. Henna Maria, and I now close the Spiritual Forum.